Hey up, and welcome to part three of my talk about the destruction of working class British education. We finished part two by looking at Ruskin College, Oxford, Plato College, Oxford, and the extramural departments of the big universities. So, what went wrong? The system wasn't perfect, but by and large, the brightest and the best got a decent education in spite of everything that the state threw at them. I think that if I had to put factors down, I would say the destruction of the extramural departments probably came first, and that for that we can blame John Major. So I'm pleased to report that this has nothing to do with Margaret Thatcher. The odious slag didn't touch education, give her credit, for one thing. So what did Major do? Well, he insisted that, as I understand it, the extramural departments had to have examined courses. Now let's just pause for a moment. Extramural, as we know, is the Latin for beyond the wall. You are part of the university community, but not part of it. So you're not taking examined courses. You're there for your own benefit. So when they insisted that the extramural courses had to be examined, that took them from beyond the wall and brought them within the wall. And an awful lot of working class people who were still working for a living did not want to dedicate the time necessary to study for a piece of paper. They were quite happy to go and take a course on economics at the extramural department and get something out of it for themselves. They just didn't need a piece of paper to stick on the wall. So folks stopped going to extramural departments, and sadly, extramural departments began to close. I'm sure there was more to it than that, but please remember I was out of the UK at the time, so what I know about all this period is really from letters coming from people in Britain. Yeah, letters, not emails. What happened with the Ruskin and Plato? Well, they both came under pressure under the Major regime, pressure which increased with Blair to take more students. Now, the only way they could take more students was to lower their standards. Because let's face it, they were both elite institutions. For every 5 applicants to Ruskin, only one was accepted in my day. Compare that to the University of Oxford, where for every 3 applicants, one was accepted. It was actually more difficult to get into Ruskin than it was to get into a university college, I suppose. That changed in the early 90s when, under pressure from the government, Ruskin began to dropped its diploma courses. It dropped its relationship with the University of Oxford, or the major part of that relationship was dropped. And the college became a 1 year institution offering Open University certificates in higher education. So that meant by the time you got through Michaelmas term, it was time to start applying for a university course somewhere. I mean, you didn't have time to have a shit shave or haircut. Plato College took a different approach. They played down their diplomas and they began to play up short courses. There's nothing wrong with short courses, so long as they are either unexamined, which of course they couldn't do, or academically rigorous. Sadly, Plato decided that academic rigour had to take a back step to getting more bodies through the college. And the University of Oxford, which was still invigilating these materials, obviously began to object. So that led to, well, a disagreement, shall we say, between Plato and the University of Oxford. And at the end of it, rather than cut its links with the university, the Catholic hierarchy decided to close down Plato College, which they did in the 1990s. Ruskin struggled on and struggled. A friend of mine, now sadly long dead, his name was Conway Xavier, had been my contemporary at Ruskin, and he fought tooth and nail to try to keep the college as it was. Obviously, he failed. Obviously, he failed. The college had a period of time as a 1 year open university college, admitting far too many students, so it ceased to be the Ruskin that I knew and loved. Remember, well, let me give you a story. In 1983, I sat down and compiled a league table of Oxford colleges that had alumni in the House of Commons. Now, obviously, joint first were the two giants, Balliol College and Christ Church. After all, they are the giants. Third place, but way, way, way ahead of any other college, was tiny Ruskin, which, let's face it, only took about 50 or 60 students a year for the 2-year diploma. An awful lot of Labour MPs could call themselves proudly Ruskin men. Once the college ceased to be a serious institution, a serious academic institution, people like that who had gone to Ruskin began to look for other avenues for education. Couple that with the fact that the Labour Party became essentially a middle class scam, then you can understand what's going on. Eventually, Ruskin, and I don't know the full story, but eventually Ruskin was forced, almost closed, and is now, well, there is an institution that calls itself Ruskin College, Oxford, but it's part of the so-called University of West London. Yeah, I've never heard of that outfit either. But that's Ruskin. I think it's fair to say that Ruskin is as dead as Plato. And they're both as dead as the extramural departments. And all this began because government wanted more and more people to get more and more pathetic pieces of paper, when working class people just wanted to get an education, in the case of the extramural departments, or were willing to put in the intellectual legwork to get in to Ruskin College, Oxford, or Plato College, Oxford. There weren't enough of them, so the colleges had to essentially degrade themselves. I criticised Plato at the time for their decision to close, Now, on reflection, I think they were right. And I think that the institution that calls itself Ruskin College, Oxford, is not something that I want anything to do with. What I tell people is that what used to be the extramural department at the University of Oxford now offers a 2 year part-time course that leads to an Oxford University certificate in higher education. If you are a working class bloke who has made his bones with the WEA and maybe done some courses with the Open University off your own bat, my advice to you is to apply to do that course. It is as academically vigorous, I'm sure, as Ruskin and Plato were in their days. But viewed overall, that is very much small change. The days of working class education that was regarded as being for a good in itself is long, long over. And on that note, I invite you to think on, folks. Bye bye.